Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 83. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for listening this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, let me give you a little taste of Pennsylvania weather. We had the polar vortex last week. It was negative 20 with the wind chill, and now it's 50 and 60 degrees. So we experience seasons in PA, unlike your Vegas weather that's always, what, a nice 70 degrees.
No, not that
time of year.
Not that warm, but it sure is. It sounds like it's a recipe there to get sick.
I've been really good this year. I've been taking my vitamins. I have felt pretty healthy this year.
I got a flu shot for the first time in my life, and
hey.
Not that I've had to battle much. I usually get that kind of, I don't know, that 2-day flu sometimes, especially when the season lets out and, I kind of let my body relax a little bit. I don't have time to bleed during the season. But I've done good health-wise myself so far. And, of course, I will be going back to Florida, back to that damp climate here in about, next week. I guess this time next week I'll be boarding a plane heading back to Florida for a week. So keep that in mind, listeners. We're going to go to a 2-day-a-week podcast starting next week. We'll have a Tuesday show. There will be no Friday show next week, and then we'll have to play it by ear, see when I should be back in time for us to have a Monday show. So probably only one show next week, but hopefully, there probably shouldn't be a lot to talk about, during next week.
Well, you think there wouldn't, but every time I feel like we're getting to the lull of the offseason, a new story pops up, and that's a good segue into what happened yesterday, the news that broke, at least from TMZ, of an event in January where Antonio Brown was involved in a domestic dispute, and details are obviously scarce right now. We know no arrest was made. The police looked into it. They didn't decide there was enough there to press any charges or anything like that, but another unfortunate event being associated with Antonio Brown.
Yeah, he can't stay out of the news cycle, and like I've said since the end of the season, man, I sure don't want to see him play in another uniform, but there, if he stays in Pittsburgh, you got to have checks and balances in place for when the next incident happens during the regular season. And it's going to happen, whether it be something like this. And once again, let us clarify to make sure he gets the fair shake out of this. I saw some people on Twitter and some people, media outlets, adding domestic violence dispute into the story. That is not the case. It's a domestic dispute. Look, you could have, you could have a yelling match with whoever in your house, and if somebody calls the cops on you, that's probably going to go in the books as domestic dispute there. So, there's no proof yet that there was violence involved. Obviously, you go back to last off season when and I think it took until October or so until the lawsuit news started spilling over that there was an incident that AB had last off season of the furniture throwing off the balcony and this, that, and the other. This, however you want to look at it, cops are just not called out to your house for no reason at all. I know that I can speak from that personally.
Let's not probe that too much.
But it's not good, and it just seems like there seems to be something else every other week with this guy, and man, he's making it harder and harder to push for him to stay in Pittsburgh, and also you have to wonder, what is this doing to his trade value?
Sure, yeah, it's certainly not the news you want to be associated at all, but especially this time of year and given the circumstance that AB's in. I mean, I don't know how much it really changes things because there was no arrest. I mean, there was no even allegation or hint of domestic violence. It's always been framed as a domestic dispute, which could mean a lot of things, but I guess less severe than domestic violence. But, I mean, obviously, it's just another thing where if you're a team, you're just always waiting for that 2 a.m. phone call about AB because, these things keep happening.
And the Steelers released a statement on that. First it was Brown's lawyer, Darren Heitner, that released a statement to ESPN. I think it said the allegations are baseless and false. It's unfortunate the media is trying to use distraction like this and prior stories in an effort to tarnish my client's name and reputation. We have no further comment. Now, what I don't know what he's trying to say. The allegations are baseless and false. Either the police were called out for a domestic dispute or they weren't, right? And didn't the Hollywood police say that they were there but no arrests were made?
Yes.
All right, so maybe it's him. I
assume he's saying whoever made the phone call, that allegation was false.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, and maybe it is. Maybe look, when you got money involved and significant other, sometimes and that much money, things can happen. People can. You say the one wrong thing or get caught with one wrong person, if you will, and somebody might make a phone call. Look, I've had significant others call the law on me when I didn't deserve it.
All right. Well, that's I don't know how to handle that one, Dave. But I mean, again, I think it's largely a non-story, something we'll forget about in a couple weeks. But that's obviously not a good piece of information to be associated with Antonio Brown.
Right, absolutely. And, like I said, you just wonder what the next thing is going to be when it comes to him. And, I mean, here we are. We need like a running countdown, a little over 5 weeks to go at this point until the start of the new league year. And, yes, the Steelers don't have to trade him by the time that they give him that roster bonus right there in the middle of March. But, you would think that would be the perfect time to do it. I mean, do you really want to hand over the $2.5 million to the guy and then send him on his way and then have to eat that as additional dead money in this thing? And, the other thing I seem to get a question about on Twitter is he doing anything that's violating any terms of his contract that'll help the Steelers get out of paying this or paying that or getting out a little less dead money. Unless he gets suspended at this point, you could go after a portion of his signing bonus, and then obviously if he was suspended, he's not going to get paid whatever amount of weeks that he would be on a suspended list. But none of that's going to come. All of that would come into play in 2019 when he's still on your team or somebody else's team. So right now, no. As far as I can tell, there's nothing they can do with AB to recoup anything. They had a chance maybe to recoup, some of his pay in that week 17 of him going AWOL, but evidently he did enough to meet whatever criteria there. So no, you're at the point now with AB where you're going to, and I'm sure the meetings have been had, and there are probably more going on this week, but probably by the end of this week, Alex, you got to think that the team's starting to make preparations, to get into free agency and all. They're going to have to make a cold, hard decision, I think, of what they want, what the plan is going to be with AB this offseason.
They will, and for me, and I don't obviously know this for certainty, but I think you can make the decision really before the Combine, because the Combine is usually when those talks really heat up, when you're around all 31 other teams and GMs and coaches, and you can start having some legitimate and sincere conversations. So that would be my approach to it. Dave, we need one of those like workplace incident signs, 2 days without an incident involving Antonio Brown, and then just constantly rolling that back to zero because there's something that pops up every single day. And as a kind of an extension of that, again, a lot of players weighing in during the Super Bowl, right after the Super Bowl. I know Plaxico Burress was asked about kind of his relationship or his thoughts on the AB situation, his relationship with Ben. And Burress thinks, and this was just his guess, but he thinks he's going to end up in Indy next year, Antonio Brown will.
Yeah, and it was a great, if people haven't caught it yet, with Kristen Leahy, who really, in my opinion, I'm glad she's kind of separated. I don't know if she is. She totally off the Colin Cowherd show yet. I don't watch Colin Cowherd religiously enough to know, but I know that when I do watch it, I enjoy her on there. And hopefully she's kind of separated from him, from Colin Cowherd at this point. She does a fantastic job on Fair Game, which I think you can catch on Fox Sports 1, and you catch the clips online as well, too. She really is a great interview. She gets, or interviewer, she gets athletes to really kind of relax. I know Roy Firestone doesn't mean anything to you, but kind of Roy Firestone back in the day on ESPN was a guy that had, was an interviewer that had you know, the kind of the characteristics that Easy was able to set athletes at ease, and the big joke was he'd get them to cry. I don't know if you've seen Jerry Maguire before. They kind of reference, when Rod Tidwell's on there, Roy Firestone gets him to break down. That was the big kind of joke back. I guess is 20 or more years ago now that, you go on Roy Firestone's show, he's going to get you to cry and all. But anyway, that's a long way of saying that it's a great interview with Kristen Leahy. And during the interview, Plaxico, who, apparently still has a good relationship with Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown. In fact, they were sitting there together, and she asked Plaxico to FaceTime Antonio on the spot, and he did, and Antonio picked up there. Now they would, not much was revealed during that whatever portion of it that they showed of him talking or FaceTiming Antonio Brown, but and obviously Plaxico, because of the relationship that he has with the two, he wasn't going to dump any dirt or say anything, hugely derogatory about Antonio Brown. I mean, he even went, here's what we know about Antonio and Brown in practice, and former and current teammates say this, he's the hardest working guy on the field, and I don't think anybody is going to deny that. I mean, the guy, and Plaxico even says, he says, what are you doing going so hard on a Wednesday when the two practiced together? And AB said, there's nothing like dominating another grown man. And Plaxico's like, all right, go ahead, dominate another grown man on a Wednesday if you feel up to it. I mean, I have nothing wrong with the guy like that, but it's what, what AB's doing off the field now that's, you got to weigh into the equation here with what he's giving you on the field. Is what he's doing off the field tolerable enough for you to put up with because of what he gives you on the field? And I think Cameron Hayward even said last week in a Super Bowl interview that, it's reached that point now where maybe, you really got to take a long, hard look at it. But Burress went on to say, but for Mr. Rooney to come out and say that Antonio would not be in training camp this summer, and just to be clear, Mr. Rooney said it's hard to envision Antonio not being in training camp when he talked. Not that he wouldn't be. And Plaxico continues that knowing the Steelers organization and knowing the gold standard that they set, that kind of bothered me a little bit because I've never heard Mr. Rooney come out and say something like that, especially about a caliber of player like Antonio Brown. So there has to be something behind it. I would like to see him finish his career in Pittsburgh, but you just never know. As the business part of it gets tricky sometimes. And, Plaxico was asked, if he thinks Antonio needs a fresh start would do Antonio Brown good. And he says, I think everybody needs a fresh start. I think that relationship between Antonio and the organization may have ran its course. I'm not in the locker room, but I do speak to Antonio often. I'm not going to just give you the whole juicy story. So he let on one other time during the interview that he knows more than what he's willing to say. Now, what that means, I don't know, because, unless the Steelers have come out and told Antonio Brown, we're going to trade you, which I mean, you would think they'd come out and said that to him, at this point.
I doubt it.
I doubt it too. So I don't know what Plaxico knowing the full story about Antonio Brown has to do with the price of tea in China, because Antonio Brown does not control this situation. And later on in the interview, Plaxico was asked to guess where he thinks Antonio Brown will land next year, and he guessed the Indianapolis Colts, but says he doesn't really know. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, it was a nice perspective. Good to hear from Burrs, but being good friends with Ben, who he said that Ben was a great leader, and really praised the job that Roethlisberger has done. And being friends with AB, obviously FaceTiming him on the spot, you're not going to really expect a whole lot of criticism or maybe the most objective perspective and answer, which is fine. But it was still good insight nonetheless, I thought.
Has your opinion on any of this changed since week 17 of the regular season?
When you say week 17, you mean before we know he went AWOL or after?
I mean, since him going AWOL.
Not really. I mean, it's always been consistent of the idea of, is it salvageable? Yes, it could be, but AB's got to pick up the phone. He's got to be mature enough to take that step, and he hasn't been. And it's not, the blame doesn't 100% fall on him. It goes around to everybody, but generally, no. My answer's been the same, that they got to start talking, and if they don't communicate, then that relationship's not gonna exist anymore.
Yeah, I find mine shifting a little bit more. I think I was already on the side of I could really see this team trading him, but not ruling out obviously the possibility of him returning. It wasn't a slam dunk he's gone or slam dunk he's here or going to stay. But I think I found myself the last couple of weeks here sliding more of the opinion. I don't know, did we put percentages on it a couple of weeks ago? I mean, all this thing seems to be a blur. I mean, we're talking about it every damn day here, but I would tend to be more on the side now. I think about 65% of him being traded and 35% of him remaining in Pittsburgh. Now, Andrew Brandt, who writes, obviously on the business side of things, and all, former front office guy and all, he's in one of his latest columns on Sports Illustrated, he still stands firm in the fact that he does not see the Steelers trading Antonio Brown because of that $21.12 million cap hit, being so large, and he still stands firm in his opinion that they're not going to trade him.
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised by that answer because he has the business, math perspective in his football background. I mean, I'm still on the side of, and I was before, really leaning towards that, yes, they will. And I think that until they have that conversation, until we know that they've spoken to each other, then yes, definitely that they will. So, I mean, I really haven't changed because I guess they've already been there. But, it's still like 60-40. They will trade him to he will stay. And like I said, I think by the combine, you need to really have a firm answer internally. So when you start talking to other teams, because obviously other teams are going to start asking you about it, I mean, continue to ask you about it, you need to either have your answer of, yeah, let's negotiate, or no, we're going to, keep them and work this thing through.
All right. Thank you for tuning into the Antonio Brown Depot podcast.
Yes, everyone's favorite section of the show. All right, let's get to some other Steeler talk here. One coaching hire announced yesterday. Adrian Klemm was hired to be the assistant offensive line coach, essentially taking Sean Surratt's spot, and Surratt got bumped up to offensive line coach following Mike Munchak's departure to Denver. I think a necessary hire. I think we talked about the importance and the value of an assistant offensive line coach, but what are your initial thoughts on the hire?
Yeah, no real quick opinion of it, to be honest, outside of the fact that I'd like to see Surratt have some help, and I think you've talked about it in the past, how being able to divvy these guys up into two groups, and when you have an assistant, you're able to do that, so maybe you're able to get more done, right, during a practice with that. He was a name out of nowhere, right? I mean, nobody saw it coming, I don't think. I don't know how worrisome it is with all the way things went down at UCLA. I mean, the guy was known as a great recruiter, and maybe we know why. Maybe he was breaking a few rules there along the way, because I think he, even at SMU, during that final year, he was named director of recruiting there. What was that, like 2011 or something like that? Didn't stay, didn't after 2011 though, or whatever year that was. Then he immediately went to UCLA there. So he's put in his time at the college level as an offensive line coach. Obviously, worked with, I guess, Tom Bradley some at UCLA, and worked under Jim Mora Jr. When he was there. So kind of a good, was surrounded by, presumably good mentors, if you will. And, now here he is. I mean, obviously a former NFL offensive lineman, knows what it takes to play on a Super Bowl winning team. He won 3 Super Bowls with the New England Patriots early on in his career. I think he mostly played tackle with them, and then final year of his NFL season was with the Packers, and I think he played some left guard there. So he's got kind of the position versatility aspect of it down, which is always nice. He's a former NFL offensive lineman, which is nice, and he's spent some time coaching offensive linemen at the college level, so he should be able to adapt some to those. Another set of eyes. You probably wouldn't expect him to have too much of an impact, at least initially, but at least Sean Sarrett gets him some help.
Well, it'll be curious because that might be a really important role, the way it was for Surratt, where, at times, they would split up into groups and one would take the interior guys, one would take the tackles, and they would be coaching them separately. So you're, in that moment, functioning as the offensive line coach because you're the guy running that group, running that drill. I don't know if that's going to be the same with Klemm out of the gate. We'll see. It's something I'll definitely be watching for in training camp. My quick concerns with Klemm, and just looking at it from our 30,000-foot lens, but a guy that's never coached in the NFL before, so you're making a jump there. He's always been a college guy, and that was the issue with Bradley, and you saw they get him help pretty much immediately going into year 2. And why didn't he coach the last 2 years? He got fired by UCLA in January 2017, hasn't coached football since, that I'm aware of, at least, that I can research and find. And that was maybe in part due to the recruiting violations he had at UCLA. They got him on a just brief suspension in 2016 and a 2-year show cause from the NCAA, which maybe scared some teams off. But we're talking now about a guy that hasn't coached football in a couple of years and has never coached at the NFL, and that's a combination that does worry me to some degree.
Maybe he was still getting paid by UCLA. Maybe that. I mean, and I'm just guessing. And maybe he had in other words, if he went somewhere else, then they weren't going. It was kind of like a. He wasn't going to get paid by UCLA if he took another job or something.
Well, sure. I mean, there might have been some sort of offset there,
right.
But I mean, I would like him to take another job. I mean, maybe he would rather coach and get paid than not coach and get paid.
Sure,
so, I mean, I don't know
and I'm just guessing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, if I have to guess, is that show cause penalty, because my brief research on how the show cause penalty works is that basically if any other school wanted to hire him, they would have to go in front of some NCAA council and basically justify why they want to hire Klemm, and maybe the teams just didn't want to go through all that bureaucracy to make the hire. But if this guy was as good of a recruiter as he's apparently billed, then I'm surprised no team took that chance. And the recruiting violation, for those that don't know, it was the allegation was that he paid for, I think, training and housing for 2 recruits, and he claimed that he thought they were already UCLA commits and it was all on the up and up, and the NCAA disagreed. So, does it really matter in the eyes of the Steelers? No, because that's the NCAA and their rules, and half the time the NCAA is wrong. But that was the recruiting violation that got him the suspension.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying, right? Or
UCLA.
How's the saying go?
No, you're right. Yeah, UCLA initially stood by him, but then fired him, I think, after that year. So that's with Klemm. But again, it was a necessary hire. I think to not go with an assistant offensive line coach would have been really detrimental. I think that's, again, one of the big reasons for why this offensive line has had so much success, where you can split guys up, when you can get more individualized attention, and maximize the reps in practice. I think that's massive. So hopefully they do the same, but we'll have to see how they approach it. Is it going to be the exact same relationship, Surratt and Klemm, as it is Munchak and Surratt? That might be tough to do, especially year 1, but we'll wait and see and find out.
The good thing about it is you should have and could have, I guess is the right way to order to put it in, all of your offensive line back next year. And Mr. Rooney says, Art Rooney II said as much like that. I don't know how much lip service that was. I mean, you could definitely see someone like Gilbert maybe getting cut, or you could see Gilbert returning. I mean, there are good arguments to be made on both sides for Gilbert to be gone and Gilbert to play out his final year in Pittsburgh as well. The rest of it, I mean, I don't see how Ramon Foster gets away. So, and then the rest of the exclusive and restricted free agents should remain. Talking about Finney and guys like Filer and stuff like that should stay. So it's not like Surratt and Klemm are going to have a group that doesn't know what's going on.
Right. When do you think a decision gets made on Gilbert? Will it be before free agency? Like, as we're seeing cuts already around the league. Is that when you would expect it?
Well, I mean, go back and look at the Steelers' history of the salary cap kind of cut purges, if you will. Don't those normally happen right around when they get back from the combine?
I don't remember. That's why I thought you might know.
Yeah, I mean, it generally, because Kevin Colbert usually talks every year at the combine, about what's forthcoming. We have some deletions and coming and this, that, and the other. And if you go back and look at, let's do a quick search of when Gay, who was it last year? Gay, Golden, and when were Gay and Golden cut?
Let's do some research. March. I don't know. That's not the right year. March 12th.
Which is right before the start of the new league year. Yeah,
let's see. With Golden, I'm sure Golden was a similar timeline.
I think Gay and Golden were at the same time, wasn't? And Mitchell, Gay, and Golden all cut at the same time, and Wilcox was right after it. Was Wilcox right after the draft?
I think so, yeah. Wilcox was after the draft. Golden was March 14th, and it was, basically Golden, Gay, Mitchell got cut all around the same time.
Right, and that happened right before the start of the new league year.
All right, so that would make sense with Gilbert and Morgan Burnett, who I'm sure Burnett's a lock to be released, right?
I don't see how he's not. Right, and then, I think, Burnett's the slam dunk. Yes. And then I know people want, and I don't blame them. I know people want Bud Dupree jettisoned and all too. I just don't see how that's going to happen. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, folks. I mean, to me, it'll be a shock if they if Bud Dupree is cut right before the start of the new league year there. So definitely Burnett, and then. I think
Gilbert stays.
Flip the coin. I'm leaning more to him going, but they're not. They don't have to do it from a salary cap perspective, really. So, right. If I think it comes down to, do you think he can earn his money this year?
And if he's healthy, the answer to that is yes, a resounding yes.
Right, and if he's healthy, yeah. If you think he can stay healthy this year, then yes. He's not making a gob of money,
no.
Comparatively speaking. Now, here's the thing. Is he going to be Look, he has all the incentive in the world to make 2019 his best season ever, right? Because especially if it's with the Steelers, because he's got an expiring contract and he's going to want to dip into that one last contract here, and he's going to want to get paid. So, he's got all the incentive in the world. So, it's not like this team is going to be crunched from a salary cap perspective where they need that extra for whatever million, with in salary cap space that they would get by releasing them. So there is probably a better chance of Gilbert staying than there is him being cut.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Because worst case scenario, Gilbert can't stay healthy, and you just go with what you would have gone with if you cut Gilbert with Filer and Okorafor, and those guys aren't going anywhere. Gilbert's roster spot's not going to jeopardize those two players, so. The only real upside to cutting Gilbert is to save that little bit of money, but when you have a lot of cap space already to work with and more you can create by doing things like cut Morgan Burnett, which you will, it's not really a compelling thing to dump Gilbert. So I think he does ultimately stay.
He's scheduled to earn $4.865 million in base salary in 2019 and a $50,000 workout bonus. So if you cut him now, you save all $4.9 million minus roster displacement. So there's a good chunk of there's $4.5 million there. So the question, like I said, it's you're not paying him a ton of money, but you better know that he can earn that money. You got to have a good feeling about him staying healthy.
Yeah, or at least. It depends on the injury last year. Obviously we don't know that situation too well. But if he's healthy, we agree that he's worth that $4.8 million, right?
Sure he is.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of talent, he's been a top 5 tackle when he's played. It's just a matter of him being available to play. So yeah, that wraps up the offensive line. I think the Klemm hire was a good hire in terms of the idea, and I think some of the questions we have, it'll be hard to really judge, but we'll see what happens there. Dave, where do you want to go here? You want to tackle Bell
Well,
or
let's go
Ben?
while we're talking about contracts and money and all
Yep.
like that. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Le'Veon Bell and not so much about the transition tag because we hammered that, I think, in the last podcast here. But Pro Football Focus, along with Over the Cap from founder Jason Fitzgerald, kind of projected the contracts for some of the top free agents this year. And when they got to Bell, they have with Le'Veon Bell that the projection is what is it? 4 years, $60 million, $33 million in guaranteed money there. So, $15 million per and $33 million in guaranteed, which, I'm sure that, is that fully guaranteed? Or is that injury guarantees included in there? We go back and you if you break down the Todd Gurley contract properly, you'll see that it's that what the full 30-something fully guaranteed. Now, a lot of it was rolling guarantees, a lot of the guarantees that you expect him to hit, and he will. You're not going to sign a guy like that, at least you wouldn't think. Although his usage during the playoffs was a little bit questionable, and for what it's worth, Sean McVay's still saying that he doesn't have any procedures scheduled, and just one of those things. I don't know. But 4 years, $60 million with $33 million guarantee. That's what you would expect Bell to get on the open market. The only thing is how much, where the guarantee is going to come from. And remember, that was the big supposed sticking point for Bell not wanting to sign that deal with the Steelers last offseason, was the guarantees. Now, if you look at the transition tag and all, it's going to be interesting to see how the Steelers handle this. I for one, hope they don't even mess with this because, the fungibility of the running back position, just let him go, and his attitude and him wanting to be a rap star and all, and, him sitting out a year of football has got me a little bit nervous too.
Sure. No, there were valid concerns with that. There was nothing surprising in that contract projection, I'm sure, from your standpoint, was there?
No, other than maybe being maybe $1.5 million lower than maybe what I thought. But you're splitting dimes at that point, I guess, when you're talking about $15 million versus $16.5 million a season or something like that. He's going to want to be the highest paid running back. So,
sure. But what's Gurley's average yearly value? Do you know that off the top of your head? I know I'm peppering you with questions.
Right around there, right?
Yeah, I was curious to see if $15 million would make him the highest paid, or if Gurley came in a little above that.
It was with Gurley. It was his average yearly value is $14.375 million in new money average.
Okay, so 15 would make him.
So 15 million, right? So, but his agent's going to plead the inflation charge and and all like that. And as far as fully guaranteed money goes with Todd Gurley, like I said, it even though it was reported as higher, it was only 21.9. I say only, but 21.95 million that was fully guaranteed. Now you had the injury guarantee. That's why they talk about he received $45 million in guarantees as part of that deal. That's true to some extent because you have the roster bonuses, the third day, rolling kind of guarantees, if you will. But make no mistake, if they wanted to part ways with Todd Gurley right now, the only thing that was guaranteed him was the $21.95 million. He's got to make it to the start of the new league year here in the middle of March for, in fact, it says on the third day of 2019 league year, Gurley's his base salary and 2020 third day of the league year roster bonus, which totaled $12.5 million, will become fully guaranteed. So that coming up here real soon is a hard date when it comes to guarantees and Todd Gurley.
And that's why you see the big inflated $45 billion number, because one, it's generally not true, but two, it makes the agent look good. And so that's why you get the number presented the way that it does there. And that's why you always have to wait for the details of the contract to come out. And you'll have to do the same with Le'Veon Bell when the time comes to really know how much he's truly made and how good of a deal it is or isn't.
Right, and hopefully most of the people that listen to this podcast are, know to do that. Now, the other 80% of Steeler Nation out there on social media and the message boards and all like that don't. You know, they you can tell them till you're blue in the face, and they won't. They all they look at is, oh, well, he got $45 million guaranteed. You know. And they keep wanting to go back to the Le'Veon Bell contract negotiations that way. The Steelers are not going to give Bell. You know, when you look at the numbers that Pro Football Focus just put out there via over the cap, they're not going to give him $33 million fully guaranteed, and it'll be interesting to see if any team does.
Mm-hmm. Do you think a team will?
Maybe not that high, maybe around 25 to 30, but I don't know, maybe all it takes is one, right?
Yeah, it takes a couple teams getting into some sort of bidding war. So, good info there, Dave. Thanks for giving us that insight on Bell, because it is a discussion we'll have at some point, whether that's regarding Pittsburgh or him going somewhere else. It's something we will be talking about, so it's good to preview it now. All right, Dave, from Ben to Bell, you had a nice little stat passed along yesterday. It was a Tuesday night about Ben Roethlisberger, and while his sack numbers were low, and it was in part due to the great play of the offensive line, it was also in part due to him getting the football out quicker than any other quarterback in football.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing you got to keep in mind when you talk about the loss of Mike Munchak. Obviously, I'm not going to say anything derogatory about. I'd much rather have Mike Munchak in town than not. But Roethlisberger's average time to throw last year, snap to throw time, was 2.38 seconds, and that was the fastest of any quarterback during the regular season. And when you go back to a post that I had a little over a month ago at this time, where we talked about how Roethlisberger was the king of the dink and dunk short passes, all that, each of those kind of back each other up. I mean, he was getting the ball out quick. Now, he was his average time to throw being the fastest and all like that. Of his 710 total dropbacks, 428 of those had him spending less than 2.5 seconds in the pocket before either a pass attempt, a sack, or a scramble happened. His passer rating was 99.5 on those 425 pass attempts, but he still managed to throw half his interceptions in those situations on his way to completing 72% of those pass attempts. Now, when you look at his pass attempts that came on 2.5 seconds or more of him holding the football after it was snapped, he completed just 59.1% of those attempts and threw another 8 interceptions. But his 12 touchdowns, along with the yardage gained on those other 247 whatever pass attempts, still equated to a 92.4 passer rating number there. Now, as a means of comparison here, Roethlisberger's average time to throw in 2017 wasn't that much longer than it was this year. It was 2.42 seconds versus 2.38 this past year, and in 2016 that number was higher than that at 2.49. So, there has been, over the course of the last 3 years, we've seen Roethlisberger's snap to throw time get shorter, quicker. But last year he still managed to be sacked 24 times during the regular season, and his average time to sack time was 3.48 seconds after the ball was snapped. Only twice was he sacked less than 2.5 seconds. Now, when you're getting sacked on average nearly 3.5 seconds in the pocket is an eternity in today's NFL. So it's not surprising that most of his sacks probably were over that. Only twice he was sacked less than 2.5 seconds. So that tells you a lot right there. And as we said, the average time to sack was 3.48 seconds. So, how much didn't Munchak really? I mean, obviously you want good technique, you want to be able to protect your quarterback, but overall, Roethlisberger was getting the ball out quick just the same.
It sure helps the sack numbers when you're throwing as many screens and RPOs as the Steelers do. That helps those numbers. Man, I would love to see some numbers compared to now versus to Bruce Arians' age and just see what the snap to throw was. You're probably seeing half a second difference. I'd be interested in those numbers. But yeah, it's been really something to see Ben's game evolve over time. And that's the one thing I think you have to give Todd Haley credit for, as much as the relationship between Ben and Haley was prickly. Haley helped change Ben's game and get the ball out quicker and realize that, hey, you're not the same old backyard Ben. You're not 22 anymore who can run around and have Terrell Suggs all over you and throw the football away. So you have to change your game. And so you've seen that evolution, and that's why Ben's be able to play as long as he has, and it's going to be able to play a couple more years.
I was thinking after going over this stat and writing this post last night, what would you guess that Roethlisberger's snap to catchable? Let me think of the best way to word this. Roethlisberger's snap to catchable target time to AB increased or decreased from 2017 to 2018. Do you understand where I'm coming from there?
Trying to. On the throws that were catchable, you're telling me how long did it take for him to throw the football?
I'm talking about from time to snap to time to where the ball will either hit AB's hands or was it a catchable, or drop, basically, where it was a catchable situation or in the vicinity, if you will. So not necessarily, I guess, catchable, but let's say
it got to the target.
Got within a yard of the target. How about that?
You're asking if it decreased from last year to this year?
Yeah. Would you? And I don't know the answer to this. And I don't know if it's worth researching or not. I'm willing to bet, and I don't know. I'm just going off the top of my head. I'm willing to bet that Roethlisberger's time snap to target time went a little bit long, grew some in 2018, because it just didn't seem like he was hitting him on shorter passes as much as he normally did.
I feel like I'm going to go the other way. I feel like it decreased because I felt like they threw deep less to AB this year just because it wasn't available and it wasn't working, so they had to start finding ways to get AB underneath. And then you couple that with the quick screens and stuff that shave that number down pretty good. Although
my mind is a little bit polluted from the fact of still that early season post that I did on the on the failed pass attempts between Roethlisberger and Brown early on in the season.
Right.
Remember when the Wi-Fi was down?
I remember. Yeah, I think the first 4 weeks the number might be higher, but I think they changed course pretty quickly and just stopped throwing deep because they just wasn't working. Teams were taking it away, they weren't connecting, and they wanted to go with a different, shorter approach.
Maybe when we get into maybe I'll research that when we get into the dogger days of summer here.
That is a U project if I've ever heard of it.
It's probably useless, but I'm the king of
that's why it's a U project.
I'm the king of useless kind of stuff like that.
Hey, you're doing well in the Donnie Shell stuff. I know we touched on that on Monday's show. You're already a couple seasons in, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to be able to compile quicker than I thought a fairly good statistical snapshot of his career, from tackles to sacks to passes defense to interceptions to forced fumbles and fumble recoveries. I think I'm going to get, obviously better than what's out there, but I'm willing to bet I'm within, 5% of the 4% of the true numbers. Now, I can only go on without watching every game, which is obviously impossible right now. You have to go off of what the game books tell you. Mm-hmm. But I've recovered all of those. Now, some are more illegible than others, but I think I'm going to get a pretty good snapshot on him. And hopefully people looked on my Twitter machine feed last night. I'm going to start trying to compile as many of his interception GIFs as I can during this process as well too. And I was thinking about this before I laid down last night to stare at the ceiling for an hour and a half. When I finally do put this thing together, and I don't know if it's going to be by this time next year. Hopefully it will. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll be a year after. I've got all the email. I've able to compile in past time. I've able to compile all of the Pro Football Hall of Fame voters' email addresses. So when I get something together, a nice proposal, if you will, I'm going to bombard them with it, and I might ask our listeners to bombard them via email as well too. Just I don't know how would you perceive that is that over the top to get bombarded by?
I think Donnie Shell deserves a little over the top coverage right now.
Because the only way it's going to get him in at this point is to get these guys to take a cold hard look at it. But and I want the thing that I hope to accomplish when I get this full stats perspective together too, and I might ask for listeners' help and on the blog as well too, help as well on the site, is what kind of unusual trends are out there that as far as Donnie Shell and like seasons in a row where he had like, let's say 80 tackles or more. Now you don't have anything. What the problem with this is because the time frame that unless you dug up everybody else's stats, you're not going to have a lot to compare it to. But you are going to have some cold hard interceptions, numbers and all like that, to compare it to, and maybe fumble recoveries and things like that of guys that are already in the Pro Football Hall of Fame here. So, like I said, I'm taking this kind of seriously, Alex, and I hope to build a good case for Donnie Shell to get into Pro Football Hall of Fame, at least during these summer months here.
Absolutely. I know you do a great job with it, and I can't wait to see where that goes. My recent project, which is much less involved than your Donnie Shell article I wrote today for Steelers Depot, talking about the Steelers' rush and cover. And Dave, we talk about it all the time during the season. You'll hear it from Tomlin. You'll hear it from your weekly NFL countdown show on Sundays or whatever your cup of tea is. And rush and cover go together. You get pressure, you're going to get interceptions, and that is true for 31 cities in the NFL, but not Pittsburgh. It's the craziest thing. I wanted to put the number to it, at least investigate it last night. And over the last 2 years, Steelers have recorded 108 sacks. That's more than anybody in the league by a wide margin. And yet, Dave, they rank tied for 26 in takeaways. And you look at the rest of the top five in the NFL, Chicago, Jacksonville, New Orleans, LA, in sacks the last 2 years. Those teams are all top 10 in takeaways. So for those cities and those teams, rush and cover go together. In Pittsburgh, it doesn't happen, and that's just another way to look at the lack of playmaking, and that's one of the biggest issues for this defense right now.
But we agree. And I know you'd have to do this for every team if you did it, but what if you were to add in how many dropped interceptions did they have?
Well, that's part of the problem, is that there are some opportunities. The rush is getting its job done. They're getting sacks, they're creating pressure, they're forcing bad decisions. But the blame here is not on the rush one bit. It's on the lack of playmaking and ability to finish plays from the secondary. That's where I'm pointing the finger at.
All right, so in other words, they got a bunch of Ike Taylors who can't catch.
They do, yeah. They dropped. I think I had 10. I think after the Oakland game, 10 dropped interceptions. I believe PFF by the end of the year, before like week 17, said they had 13 dropped interceptions, which was the most in football. So yeah, it was a high amount. And if you pick off just half of those, then we're having a very different conversation right now. But yeah, they've had 37 takeaways the last 2 years with 108 sacks. There's been 11 teams since 2000 that have recorded 100 sacks over a 2-year span. And all those teams have had at least 43 takeaways, and 9 of them have had at least 50. The Steelers sit with 37, and that's just unacceptable.
Do we know do you remember from last year how many dropped in interceptions that they had?
No idea. Not as bad as this year, I feel like, though.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it was as bad as last year, but I mean, there obviously were some.
Sure.
Look, we're talking about, and I guess it's a good time to maybe kind of segue into that stat that nobody likes to talk about, but I keep getting backed up on every year, and that's the fact that the Patriots won the Super Bowl obviously this year, and they did so with a defensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt number of under 6. How much How much weight do you put in that? Do you stand by the fact that this is just a statistic anomaly, or do you think there is something in this number?
Oh no, I think there's definitely something in that number. No question about it.
All right. Well, how much in the number is there?
I mean, that's a tougher question to ask, but I think it's certainly a one that I'm glad you share and one that I look at pretty seriously.
When you look at only 3 teams, and this goes back, 3 teams that of the 12 that made the playoffs this year had an adjusted net yards per passing attempt number of under 6. The Patriots, obviously, the Bears, and the Ravens. Good defenses, but it was easy to predict that neither the Bears nor the Ravens are going to win the Super Bowl because of the quarterback situation. Now, will it get better I think it'll get better for the Bears quicker than it will the Ravens, but that's just me. I mean, we'll see. We'll know right away because Lamar Jackson's going to be the guy in Baltimore moving forward, and obviously Mitchell Trubisky with the Bears there. When you go back, and I have the chart, up here of not only the offensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt number, excuse me, the defensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt number, the differential of the two, along with the turnover differential of all teams, all Super Bowl winners going back to 1991. And there's there's obviously some good trends in there. You would like, and it goes back to, and we forgot to hit back, but I guess it's going to be a good time to segue. You don't have to have the best passing offense in the league to win a Super Bowl, but your offensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt number probably needs to be about 6.5 or higher. The Patriots this year was 7.3. The Eagles last year was 6.8. The year before that, kind of anomaly with Tom Brady, 8.5. And even that wasn't at the Super Bowl against the Seahawks. I mean, we're one play away from talking about looking at the Seahawks number in that situation. The Broncos, really an abnormal situation, and there's a good reason for that, but nobody wants to hear why the abnormally happened. But a 5.1 offensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt number in 2015. Remember, that was the season that Peyton Manning just was abysmal, had the plantar fasciitis and all, and then Brock Osweiler had to come in. But their defense was so damn good, 4.7 defensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt number, that it let them hang around. And when they got into the playoffs there, the defense, you talk about defense winning some games for you. They definitely did that. And the other anomaly with that was they were one of just 2 teams dating back to 1991 to win the Super Bowl with a negative turnover differential. They had a -4, and if you go back to the Giants in 2007, God bless David Tyree, the Giants had a -9 turnover differential that season, and they won the Super Bowl. And Eli Manning had a offensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt number of 4.7. Yuck. In there. But make no mistake about it, one play basically determined that Super Bowl, right? And that was the David Tyree catch. So, I mean, if you throw out that things kind of, I guess you would say those are outside the median. Is that, am I using that right? Or abnormal?
Not sure.
Abnormally.
The outlier.
The outliers here over 91 to 2018, that's quite a stretch of years there. In short, I think you need to have an adjusted net yards per passing attempt number of 6.5 or over. You need to have a defensive number under 6. And you need to have probably a turnover differential of 7, a +7 or better. If you do all 3 of those things during a regular season, your odds of winning the Super Bowl are fantastic.
And the Steelers right now aren't close anywhere in those numbers.
They, believe it or not, I mean, their defense was a lot from a statistical standpoint from that stat. They were better last year.
But how far away are they from hitting all those metrics? So turnover differential, they were minus 12. What was their average yards?
It was minus 13, wasn't it?
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Negative.
They
bad.
were like 6.3 in the defensive adjusted net yards. I mean, yeah, you say it's not too bad, but trying to get from 0.3 to 6.3 to 5.9, yeah, a couple of things need to happen in there, you know.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, they were good against teams that they should have beat. But it was the games against the Chiefs, the games against the Chargers, the Saints, the teams that you would expect them the real test were the ones that they failed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's no question about it, and that's why you got to see some big sweeping changes made this next couple months.
And I know everybody, I try to stay away from talking about these stats, but I mean, these are key stats. Turnover differential, that you can't get around turnover differential. And I don't think you can get around these passing stats when you put up these 6.5 and these under 6 for offensive defensive side. That's why I think they are worth monitoring from like week 6 on. Now, obviously, you have the advanced stats with what Pro Football or Football Outsiders does and DVOA and all like that. Those are great stats, and they're starting to hold more and more water, and we're starting to get more of those that hold more and more water as far as predictive tools go. And I think these need to be included in those predictive tools. And make no mistake, and I guess that plays into what I said I want to talk about. Can the Steelers still win if they don't have Antonio Brown? And my answer to that, or Le'Veon Bell, and my answer to that is yes, as long as Ben Roethlisberger stays healthy, and yes, as long as this defense gets better.
Yeah, I guess my answer would be yes too, but that path is so much tougher, and everything else has to basically go perfect for that to happen. And
I disagree with it has to be perfect. All you need is for your quarterback to have a 6.5 adjusted. You agree that all you need to do is have a quarterback have a adjusted net yards per passing tip number 6.5 or better, and a defense under 6. That
well, how do you get there? You're saying that's easy,
right? That's what I'm saying. I mean, I think they can maintain that offensive number without AB and without Bell. Do you agree?
Less enthusiastically than you are, but that's only half the equation. Obviously, my concern lies less with the offense than it is with the defense.
Well, yeah, no doo-doo, Sherlock.
well, that's what I'm saying. You're acting like, it's all you got to do. Just maintain on offense and improve on defense.
Right, yeah, I'm saying that's what you need to do. I'm not saying it's easy to do.
Well, that's what I'm saying is you got to be really good in replacing those guys and fixing your holes.
I don't think you have to be 5 point. I mean, when you look at today's NFL, 5.8, 5.7 is not. I mean, you look around the league and some of these other lower numbers there. I'm not asking them to be the 2018 Bears or Ravens here. Okay.
Yeah, but you yourself just said how tough it is to get from even 6.4 to 6.0.
Sure. How about catching a couple of those damn interceptions you're dropping? How about force a couple of those? How about do you know strip sacks are legal?
The Steelers don't, unless your name's T.J. Watt.
Right. A couple more of those. And I think that you go back and you look at the decisions this team has made this offseason. Okay, with the coaching staff. I think they think they're closer than what most of us maybe think. I think they've looked at it. I think they've looked at those dropped interceptions. I think they've looked at the turnover differential with the way. Make no mistake, people say, oh, you guys let Ben off the hook all the time and you don't place enough blame on Ben. Yeah, Ben had some blame with it. He threw some, 4 or 5 disgusting red zone interceptions. One or two of them probably decided a game here for the Steelers here. No, he's not off the hook. The offense needs to. Here's some breaking news for you. I figured it out. I just figured it out. The Steelers need to turn the ball over less on offense, and they need to get more turnovers on defense.
When's that Nobel Peace Prize coming to you, Dave?
Look here. Look, that's why I'm the head honcho at Steelers Depot right now.
That's why they pay the big bucks. Yeah, I mean, could you do it? Sure, but a lot's got to go right. And to lose AB, lose Bell, and hope you fix that defense, I'm just saying it's asking for a lot.
They would obviously probably have to run the ball more successfully. I'm not saying run the ball more. You have to run the ball more successfully, and Ben's got to stop. With you got. And the other thing, what was the other main thing we've talked about all season, all off season? The defense has got to provide shorter fields, because if you don't have a guy like AB, then and your running game's probably not going to be, you wouldn't think, probably one of the top 10 or 8 in the league, maybe. You have to have shorter fields for your offense to work on. You can't expect them to drive the long fields like we talked about several times this offseason there. So it's going to have to go a little bit more hand in hand. The offense has got to be the defense's best friend. The defense has got to become the offense's best friend. But when I keep going back to the same thing, if you got a greater caliber quarterback like you have in Ben Roethlisberger, and you make a few adjustments on defense, those guys start catching a football that's thrown to them and start knocking these strip sacks out. That's the difference in going from a 6.3 to a 5.7 on the defensive side. And yeah, you might go down from a 7 point whatever they had to like a 6.4 or 5 on offense. But you're going to put yourself in a better position to win a Super Bowl that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's doable. I don't want to pretend like it's not, but I just recognize how tough that
right. Don't mistake me as saying that I think it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
But look, it's going to start in free agency. It's going to start in the draft. You have a little bit more faith than me, and I like to see it that they go after maybe both a little bit higher profile inside linebacker and cornerback. Probably I'd much rather see them spend the money on a cornerback than if you're going to go all out in free agency. I'd much rather see them spend it on a cornerback than I would an inside linebacker. But you can address both and then readdress both again at some point during the draft. And you can go get you find a middle tier wide receiver during free agency here, and the jury's obviously still out on. I guess it goes back into another thing that I wanted to quickly talk about too. Let's say AB is traded. Are you going to address the wide receiver position in the first 2 rounds?
I think it's on the table. I don't want to give you the cliche answer if it depends who's there, but it's always going to be in the discussion, and if the value matches up, then yeah, sure.
We've already heard Juju talk about how he's got to get better on the outside, so he would probably be the one immediately asked to slide in more of the AB role, right?
No, I wouldn't put him in the AB role. As the X receiver, Juju doesn't really fit there. He's a slot guy, he's a Z guy, and that's one problem with this team is that James Washington and Juju are kind of more Z-type receivers. Now, ideally, you get an X receiver in the draft or free agency. You get Juju in the slot, where he's really most natural, I think, best at. He improves on the outside, but I think he's better in the slot. And James plays at the Z in your base 11 personnel. But, yeah, you got to find that X receiver, because that X-type guy is not on this roster right now, aside from AB.
Well, you're not going to just bring someone in from the outside, whether draft or free agency, and automatically plug him in. So you're going to have, like it or not, Juju play that X more.
Why can't you have somebody come in and play?
I just don't think you're going to be able to get I think you'd be better off mixing it up a little bit more in there.
But why would you do that if that's... Well, I mean, you got to have 3 receivers. You have a base 11 personnel. Your first or second round pick's not going to see the field right away.
Oh well, look how look at the Steelers. Do you think you can get it? For you to get an X to come in, it would have to be an early round draft pick.
Well, that was your question,
right? I mean, you would have to be someone like what, a Deebo Samuel, what?
Yeah, I don't have a list of names. I think Deebo could fit as an X guy, but whoever it is, yeah, the first or second round pick, yeah, they're going to play.
Well, we've already to hear Juju talk. He's planning on playing on the outside more.
Yeah, because when they go 12, when they go 2 receiver sets, it's going to be Juju and someone else. So yeah, sure. I mean, he's going to play on the outside.
Okay,
to some degree.
We'll see. I'm
just saying. I mean, you're going to draft the first or second round pick. They're going to play. They got to get on the field.
All right,
This isn't
well, back
2005.
to it. Are you drafting one in the first 2 rounds?
Yeah, I consider it. It depends who else is there, and that's the boring answer. But is it possible? Sure.
And you would, if you hope that they don't have to go out. I mean, are you going to draft another Z too, or do
No.
you have faith in Washington right now that he can sort of become that guy?
Yeah, you let Washington sort it out. Yeah, you don't draft a Z.
All right.
All right, Dave. Let's close out the show. We got some reader emails.
We do. Let's see.
Yeah, we had a lot on Monday.
If I can
get to some of the others.
if I can find some of these here real quick. Let's see. Ian McCullough writes in. McCullough. He even added a phonetic spelling there. Thanks for a great season despite so many unfortunate outcomes. Here's my question. Do you expect the transition or franchise tag to be revised in the next CBA? Any chance the transition tag goes away? It's so rarely used and probably for good reason. That's a good question. And I think the tag, look, the players don't like the tag. Agents don't like the tag.
Mm-hmm.
But the owners damn sure do. That's going to be part of the give and take, a part of this negotiation. Do I expect it to be revised? Wow. Possibly. Yeah. I mean, transition tag. Does a transition tag really hurt a player? Do you think?
I mean, more so than a franchise tag because you get paid less. So yes.
Well, I mean, transition tag, it still opens them up to the market, though, right?
Yeah, but how often does that really happen? I mean, it's the Bears having had it last year, but it's rare.
Short answer, I don't know for sure. If you can look at Andrew Brandt, like I mentioned earlier in the show, writes a column for SI. He includes his email in there. Why don't you? And I think he wrote a little bit about some things forthcoming with the cap this offseason and all. Email him. That's a good question. It'll be interesting to get his take on that as well too. It's a good question there, Ian. But look, make no mistake about it. This next CBA discussion, as Alex and I said not long, is going to be. Last week's going to be interesting to watch transpire here. Ron writes in, longtime listener to the podcast, the best one out there on the Steelers. Thank you, Ron. Watching the Super Bowl was painful this year anyway. Question, this year the year we took Artie at corner, there were a lot of other corners selected before we got our limit, a.k.a. Artie Burns. Where are they now? Are they all starters? Do you have the 2000 and what draft was that? 2016 NFL draft.
I don't have that usually pulled up as a tab. I mean, obviously we know the story of William Jackson, how the team was going to take William Jackson one pick before.
All right, I got it right here. I suppose he's talking about corners, right?
Yes.
Well, the big name that's easy to point to is Xavier and Howard.
Is he before Burns?
No, he's taken after Burns. He's taken in the second round, 38th overall. That's one of the big names that I think when you talk about corners and the Steelers passing on. Remember, wasn't that also the year that the Steelers went to Baylor?
I don't remember.
During the pre-draft visit that year, I believe it was. That they were all because wasn't our boy who was defensive tackle out of Baylor with the Bengals?
What? Oh, Andrew Billings.
Yeah, wasn't that the same year as Billings?
Probably. That makes sense.
Well, anyway,
it was the same year. Yep, same year.
Xavier Howard was the guy that everybody will immediately point to as the Steelers. Probably should have had that guy there. I think Mackenzie Alexander, he hasn't done anything much, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't think so. Did Ron say the corners before? Is that what he said? I thought that's what he said. Did I hear that wrong?
There were lots of other corners selected before we got our lemon. Okay, so before.
Yeah.
Well, William Jackson's the easy one to point to.
Sure.
Go ahead.
The corners before, Ramsey at 5, he's played well. Obviously, he is at 5, he had no chance. Eli Apple at 10, who struggled, got dealt to the Saints. Vernon Hargraves with Tampa, who I'm pretty sure struggled there. And William Jackson, and those were the corners taken before Artie Burns.
Right, and of those group, I mean, yeah, let me tell you, you'd have the locker room problem with Ramsey.
I mean, they're all better selections than Burns, but Apple struggled. Hargrave struggled. The only two really good first-round picks to justify it were, I think, Jackson and Ramsey.
Right.
Ahead of Burks.
Right. And,
I look at it.
it'd be interesting. It'd be a big what if. Obviously the story's out there that they would have taken Jackson. But, I mean, William Jackson's not a Power 5. Is that considered Power 5, the American Conference? No.
No, but they were going to take him.
All right. That as the story goes, they were going to take him. So,
As Cardinal said, I mean, that's what I base it off of.
all right. So there you go. That answers that question there. Look, I mean, make no mistake about it. I mean, they should have went another direction if they weren't going to go corner.
Yeah.
Let's see. Daniel Madden writes in. This is on Jesse James. I'm pretty sure he is good as gone. My cousin is good friends with his wife, and they all get together often, even getting tickets through them. All this season, they would say to me to get out to visit because they won't be getting tickets from him next year. Everything you hear about him is true. Good guy, stays out of drama, very down to earth, but he hates this team. According to him, Seattle tried to trade for him last offseason, but the Steelers wanted no part of it. I assume considering tight end depth is awful, Vance is injury prone, he wants to be a number one, so anyone that offers that, he will leave. Obviously, money talks, but he is definitely unhappy in Pittsburgh. Personally, I'd love for him to stay, but he won't do what Vance can do. Daniel, I'm gonna call BS on you here, but that's just me. I think Jesse's fine in Pittsburgh. I don't think as much as Jesse thinks he can be a number one. If that's true, he's probably fooling himself. He's not going to get number one money out there. I think he returns to Pittsburgh. I would not be surprised if Jesse's re-signed before over the course of the next 5 weeks. On top of it, Alex Kozora, your thoughts? I don't care what best friend's mother's hairdresser's father's sister, and that's not disrespecting you, Daniel. I know what you've heard and all like that. I'm not buying any of that. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I can't speak to that. I expect Jesse to come back for the reasons you mentioned, but I will say, if we want to assume that's true for a second, as Daniel said, Jesse's a very no drama kind of guy, and he's been in a drama-filled locker room for a couple of years, and he's the first one to make that Kardashians comment. So I could see him being annoyed by what's going on, but I think ultimately he comes back to Pittsburgh.
I mean, look, if he leaves, and you're going to have to get, a fourth or fifth rounder in there probably, and the Steelers have looked at a few tight ends. Look, Xavier Grimble's not going to be back, or I mean, if he is, I shouldn't say he's not going to be back. If he's back, he's going to have he better have a lot of competition to make the roster, and hopefully no disrespect to Xavier Grimble, but hopefully we're talking about a 53 that does not include Xavier Grimble this year.
Yeah, I read about it yesterday for Steelers Depot. The tight end depth is certainly a question heading into free agency.
But you could live with Jesse as your number two, right?
Oh yeah, I have no problem with that. I want Jesse back as a number two. Not only can I live with it, that's what I'm looking for.
So really, the depth only becomes an issue if you lose Jesse.
Well, yeah, but Jesse's not back yet. So I said the depth was Jesse's. While I think he's back, it's still not a guarantee. Grimble, obviously, Grimble situation, and so that's something you got to pay close attention to, because if you lose Jesse, then tight end becomes a need you're talking about pretty quickly.
Do you think they re-signed Jesse before starting free agency?
Yeah, maybe in that right around that 3-day window where that tampering period opens up, because I think he might want to take a look around the league and just see where his value's at, because obviously he knows he's not going to be the full-time starter here, and I doubt he will be anywhere else, but there may be some tight end starved team like an Arizona or Jacksonville that kind of likes the more traditional type of guy and wants to go that direction. So I think ultimately yes, but I think it'll be right before the start of free agency.
Yeah, I mean, I think him and Ramon Foster, I just got a gut feeling that both of them get signed right before the start of free agency here. From Matthew Suddeth. Matthew, I'm glad you included where you're from here. Warren, Michigan. I have spent some time in Warren, Michigan. Matthew, I assume you know what Harpo's is and Blondie's is. Yes, I do too. And having a band background and all, I have played in both those places before too. So Matthew, it's a small world, but I wouldn't want to paint it. He says, "Hi guys, love the podcast. Thank you for your discussion on Donnie Shell and his absence in the Hall of Fame. I've never understood why Shell and Elsie Greenwood have been held out of the Hall. It makes no sense to me, and I've been baffled for years why their names have not been brought up more often when considering enshrinement. I have seen lesser than or equal to players get inducted or considered for the Hall, with 2 Steeler players getting lost in the shuffle. Other players inducted or considered: Jack Youngblood, I think Cortez Kennedy, John Lynch, Champ Bailey, just to name a few. All great players, but Shell and Greenwood have earned the right to be in the discussion. Thoughts on that? One more current note. Would you consider signing free agent Golden Tate if the price was right? Decent and tough receiver with good after-the-catch type yardage, type receiver that can move the chains. I have no issue with Golden Tate. What about our boy Lockett? Is Lockett a free agent?
I don't think so, but I can look.
You and I were
up?
real high on Lockett.
Oh yeah.
One of the few, I'm trying to.
No, Lockett signed a 3-year extension in August.
Did he?
So no
okay.
dice there.
All right, no dice there.
With Golden Tate, I love Golden Tate. I read about the trade deadline. I would have loved to get Golden Tate. I don't know how the fit works now, because who's your X receiver? I don't think Tate's your X. He's more of a slot Z type, and you got a lot of those guys on the roster. So I think I'll pass on Golden Tate now. I like him, though.
As far as your other, Matthew, about the other, look, I mean, you don't have to. Greenwood, one project for me at a time. I have attention deficit disorder and a mania bipolar. I shiny objects quickly get me off course, and I go from having a full agenda of things that I think I'm going to get done to getting nothing done there. But yeah, point well taken, and I hope to paint a picture, over the course of the next several months, a better picture of why exactly Donnie Shell gets in. So all I ask from you, Matthew, is when we start getting some of this info on the site and on Twitter out there, that you help me do that. And also some good questions there. Let's see here. William Bailey, with the possibility of using a transition tag on Bell, can you offer any insight if the Steelers would have to pay $14 million or $9 million for use of the tag? Also, if for some reason the Bell is retained, how much does that impact our ability to sign a top-tier free agent, such as an inside linebacker or cornerback? All right, we've already talked quite a bit about, look, we would be guessing to let you know what the transition tag number is going to be at this point. Many still believe it's going to be $14.544 million. Others believe that the Steelers might put up a battle in some sort of arbitration hearing that it would be lower. Does it matter? Does it matter? I guess it matters, how much you're willing to tie up. Now, if the Steelers only had, if you're going to tie up $9 million, aren't you going to tie up $14 million on a tag to find out what you need to match with Bell? Does $5 million tag money make a difference to you whether or not you place a transition tag on Bell? My answer would be no.
Yeah, I think I'm with you.
So, does it really matter what obviously, you look, if you put the $14 million transition tag on him and nobody signed him to an offer sheet, would Bell sign the transition tag?
I don't know about predicting what Bell's going to do.
That's the thing that I think you would have to worry about. I mean, is there? One would think he's going to sign an offer sheet somewhere, right? Regardless of the transition tag amount.
Yeah, you would think he would.
Hang on, we got 5 weeks. We'll have all these questions answered here. Also, if for some reason if Bell is retained, how much does that impact our ability to sign top free agent? Look, it all depends. I mean, if you match whatever offers out there, you're assuming it would meet the terms that the Steelers normally like to do. So you would assume that if the Steelers matched any offer sheet that Bell would sign, it would include Bell having a first-year cap number lower than $14 million. So, is that number around $6 or $8 million? Who knows? But you would think that if they matched whatever offer Bell signed an offer sheet with, it would be for a lower tag number than lower than what the transition tag number is. So it would not cripple them. No.
Yeah, that's a good perspective on it.
All right, let's see here. Brian Kiernan, or Brendan Kiernan, writes in, you didn't read my email last time because you said it was too long. Keep this short and sweet. Here's the scenario. Steelers trade AB, swap positions. Yeah, we are. I'm done addressing the AB question here. Mike Welty. Do you think the Steelers will open in New England week 1? I think the NFL's come out, or there's reports out there that the week 1 Thursday night game could be Green Bay versus Chicago to celebrate the 100th season, or either Steelers versus Patriots or Chiefs versus Patriots. So I think it's going to be one of the three. Number 2, why don't teams try to emulate the Patriots, scheme and personnel-wise? Maybe they do and just fail. Maybe they do and just fail. Yep, that's.
Oh, they do. They fail.
Yeah, seems B, talent with A+ intelligence and attitude is a better combination. Yeah. I look, you're not going to get an argument out of me, Mike. I think you need guys that are going to buy all in. Maybe they don't have to be supreme talent, but when it comes to their football acumen, it better be up there. And, you better have Tom Brady, too.
Yeah, it doesn't help to have the greatest coach and the greatest quarterback in NFL history.
He goes on, number 3 bullet point here. Patriots are a lock for 12 wins every year, aside from the Steelers, who are going to challenge them in the playoffs. That's a good question. The Chargers, look, name the teams that have a quarterback.
Well, you saw what the Chiefs did. Chiefs played them tough both games.
Right. Name the teams that have a quarterback right now. The Steelers, the Chiefs, the Chargers. Who else in the AFC, Alex?
I think Baltimore is always going to be a tough team to deal with.
No, they might be in the playoffs. Come get me when they advance to the divisional round.
Yeah, I hear you. But those are basically the teams.
Sure. Richard Castleton writes, does Todd Gurley's play in the Super Bowl directly impact Le'Veon Bell's potential value this season? Granted, Gurley maybe could have been hurt, but if he was, it shows it's not necessarily spend big money on a workhorse back, only to have him beat up and hobbled when the playoffs come. Gurley also ineffective in the NFC Championship. Le'Veon Bell's going to be a great test. There are a lot of running backs around the league watching what's happening with Le'Veon Bell right now.
Yeah. Melvin Gordon outright said he's waiting for Bell to make a move before anything he does out in L.A. with the Chargers.
Absolutely. So, look, I don't think Gurley's postseason ineffectiveness, lack of playing time directly impacts Bell's potential value. Because I hate keep going back to this cop-out, but it only takes one. We've seen teams every offseason overpay for a running back. There's probably going to be one out there that's going to overpay for a running back this year, but it's going to be a good case study moving forward. What happens with Le'Veon Bell there? One more from David Burke. I promise this is it. Dave and Alex, do you think most people, if hit with truth and objectivity sticks, would prefer to be a fan of a team that has won 6 Super Bowls and appeared in at least one every decade since the 70s, long-standing consistency, or one that has won their 6 in a shorter span and more recently, but is largely irrelevant prior to the turn of the century? Ugh.
The question was, they appear in the Super Bowl every decade. Is he counting the 79-80 season? Because I don't remember.
No, I think he's saying if hit with truth and objectivity sticks, would prefer to be a fan of a team, in other words, the Steelers, that have won 6 Super Bowls and appeared in at least one every decade since the 70s,
No, I'm just being a little semantical with the language of the '80s, but that doesn't matter. I think Steeler fans are spoiled. We all know that, and so yeah, if you had the choice, I think you have to understand how good Steeler fans have it, as bad as it can feel sometimes.
The answer is both.
Dave, Brian, yes.
Yes. Trying to, if you find one of those truth and objectivity sticks, get a hold of one for me there, because I like to have that. All right. For not having a lot to talk about, we sure did have a lot to talk about. And we'll try to wrap this thing this week up in a bow for you on Friday. Once again, please keep in mind that Friday will be the last that we probably do a 3 podcast a week until we probably get closer to the draft. We'll go to the 2-week format, meaning after Friday, look for us to have a podcast on Tuesday. I then go out of town for the week, so only one podcast next week. That'll be Tuesday. If you have questions, you better send them now if you want them in on the Friday and Tuesday show. Alex and Matthew, Mark C, and Daniel and all the guys will be running the site next week in the meantime. And let's see, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. You can follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If we amuse you like clowns and you want to pay us back, you can go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. That'll take you to PayPal. If you're one of the several already who like the ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com for $25 a year, you can have that. Go to SteelersDepot.com and hit ad-free upper right navigational bar. Thank you for all of our people that support this podcast, either by listening to it or donating to the cause and or donating to the ad-free version of the site as well, too. That helps out in the long run. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.